Even though he is imprisoned, Lil Durk has managed to communicate through his music, and with legal disputes looming and his future unknown, everyone is talking. This recent action could potentially change everything, but what is he truly conveying? Is it a caution to his adversaries, or an indication to take control of the narrative? Find out what Lil Durk has to say. It takes extraordinary circumstances for Lil Durk's most recent album, Deep Thoughts, to appear. The record, which was released on March 28, 2025, also acts as a creative outlet for the Chicago rapper while he waits for trial on federal murder charges in a Los Angeles jail cell. Link and a calculated move. Due to accusations that Durk's team planned the 2022 murder of rival rapper Quando Rondo and another gang-related incident in Chicago, the entire 17-track album was recorded using prison phone conversations. A gritty mini-film that documents this unusual procedure shows producers holding phones to studio monitors while Durk records tracks via monitored prison calls, intercut with news footage of his imprisonment. The guerrilla-style recording technique compelled a minimalist strategy. No experimental production, no luscious vocal layering, just unadulterated vocals over remotely approved rhythms.
Call is from a federal prison.
We in here, we got
Hello, y'all
it's
the lab.
we in the studio, we in this motherfucker getting to it, boy. We gonna roll out and got everything.
But there is a deeper story hidden beneath. The catchy trap anthems and joint ventures with industry titans like Future and Jane Aiko. The streets are adorned with a well-crafted statement intended to uphold his legacy and possibly influence public sentiment before his trial in October 2024. It is clear that the threat of life in prison shapes Deep Thoughts. Lyrics are heavily self-censored, with violent words bleeped or erased to prevent courtroom ammunition on a first-time leak that explicitly threatens to murder him. And I kill him for any child of mine who is noticeably missing. According to enthusiasts, Vanish Mode's perplexing decision to ban terms like gun and three is the result of legal paranoia rather than moral policing. The album was criticized by some for being sanitized, while others criticized it for being less honest than earlier unfiltered confessional songs like the Voice Head Taps or 7220's Pico Coat. Rapping about bodies isn't exactly an option, according to some who view restraint as essential. When the federal government is paying attention, this conflict between self-preservation and truthfulness is what makes the record what it is. Songs like Monitoring Me have references to surveillance, including tapped phones and paranoia, while Opportunist presents Durk as a resilient survivor navigating treachery. Even still, these moments seem measured, avoiding details that would expose him. The record has equally strategic elements. Street credibility is added by Future's appearance on They Want to Be You without posing a legal danger. On Can't Hide, Jane Aiko's heartfelt hook. The portrayal of Durk is softened by themes of sensitivity, which contrast sharply with the icy demeanor that prosecutors claimed he had. Real prison imagery is avoided even in the AI-generated cover art, which shows a shadowy figure in a stylized self, signifying Durk's attempt to manipulate his story without revealing his reality. Fans of Durk about the album. Some complain that there isn't much uncensored street narrative available, longing for the pain songs that made him a pioneer of drill music. Where is the moment of truth? Others wonder about the ship. Energy uses his 2021 song on his brother's murder as a reference. Others, however, notice reflective passages like Notebook No Hook, in which Durk muses on loss and fatherhood over simple piano loops, and hail deep ideas as a mature development. Leaks made the rollout even more challenging, discontinuing Walmart, and allusions to a cancelled Sabrina feature were among the tracks that stoked rumors of a more controversial original version. The finished film felt hurried, with hurried editing and undeveloped concepts, as fans observed, advocating for last-minute legal screening. Others cited the startling beeps and altered verses as evidence that attorneys had combed through it. Notwithstanding these shortcomings, fans contend that the album's very existence is a victory, pointing out that he is still making music despite battling for his life, and that it is a labor worth honoring. It appears that Deep Thoughts has two functions for every component. Think You Glowed is one song that speaks to the streets and the courts about loyalty and betrayal, portraying Durk as a cautious leader surrounded by snakes. He becomes more approachable before his trial because of songs like Deep Depression and Alhamdulillah, which center on mental health and redemption. Even the sequences in the documentary portray him as a loving parent, in contrast to the kingpin that the prosecution portrays him as. Like a high-stakes game, every move counts. The tactic used in Sham, where song releases during the trial, maintained. His name's cultural prominence is similar to this balancing act. It appears that Durk's team uses the album as a strategy to sustain streaming numbers and public pity. The risks are higher though, because federal crimes entail life sentences. Deep Thoughts might be Durk's last song, or the starting point of a resurgence if he is declared not guilty. Depending on the trial in October, the album's legacy, Strong Feelings, could be tragically ended by a conviction. Considered a foreshadowing, its warning, acquittal might also make it a tale of perseverance. He currently stands between two universes, with Durk turning his hardships into legend. The courtroom that might put him to death, and the streets that shaped him. As deeply thoughts are causing stirs, the more significant query still remains. In what way did his indictment for a murder-for-hire plot put him in jail in the first place? Grammy-winning Chicago rapper Lil Durk was detained in Broward County, Florida, in October 2024, on federal allegations of conspiring to commit murder for paying ransom. He is charged in the indictment with planning a shooting in Los Angeles in 2022 against rapper Quando Rondo, a rival connected to Durk's protege King Von's death in 2020. Rather than killing Quando, the attack was meant to murder Savia Leal Pab Robinson, his cousin, who was the passenger in the same car. Financed the plan, prosecutors claimed that Durk used his rap collective to offer cash and lucrative recording chances to anyone who was prepared to carry out the hit. An ongoing conflict between Quando's allies and Durk's team is at the root of the case. A gunfight involving Quando's gang in Atlanta in 2020 claimed King Von's life, but accusations against Quando's associate were eventually dropped. Federal investigators said Durk's desire for vengeance led to the 2022 scheme. The first of the three primary pillars supporting the prosecution's case is financial documentation. Connect Durk to the conspiracy. Investigators traced F's credit cards to the alleged hitmen's rental cars and lodging. Additionally, according to flight records, the gunmen made their trip from Chicago to Los Angeles just a few days prior to the assault, with costs linked to F accounts. Electronic evidence is the second pillar. The prosecutors claim to have over 230 gigabytes of wiretapped calls, texts, and social media posts. Include coded dialogue regarding the storyline. They contend that references to the planned hit were made by expressions like "smoke that boy" and "handle business." According to an FBI affidavit from another Chicago investigation dated 2023, Durk also offered cash to target alleged Gangsta Disciples members in an attempt to exact revenge for the 2021 murder of his brother Dante Banks. By presenting Durk as a persistent threat, this affidavit was utilized to deny him bail. Eyewitness testimony is the third pillar. Federal records list anonymous cooperators, including one. To escape receiving a life sentence, the shooter became an informant. Although the veracity of these witnesses has not yet been established in court, they are said to have connected Durk to the hit's planning stages. With 99% of trials ending in guilty pleas or convictions, Durk confronts overwhelming odds. Many things work against him. He faces the same penalties as the criminals who committed the crime because of the conspiracy. Allegations. Mandatory minimum sentences are added by firearm enhancements to one charge of possessing a machine gun during a violent crime. In addition, prosecutors, pointing to 3 scheduled but unused trips to Dubai, Italy and Switzerland following the arrest of his associates, they claim he poses a flight risk. The trial, which was originally scheduled for January 2025, was postponed to October 2025 when both parties acknowledged that the case was too complicated. The defense will probably contend that Durk was not directly involved in the misuse of his identity on credit cards, and that creative expression rather than criminal intent is what coded language in messages represents. Court documents that have not been sealed disclose a second suspected murder in Chicago, for a greater plot. From although Durk was not accused in this case, prosecutors used it to support their argument for pre-trial custody, citing Durk's alleged desire for vengeance for his brother's murder in 2022. The affidavit references documents that detail payments for the alleged gangster disciple Stefan Mack's death. Because jurors might see this comparable example as proof of a more widespread criminal mindset, Durk's defense is made more difficult. Durk's case feeds into the current discussions concerning the use of rap lyrics in court. The prosecution will use his lyrics as proof. A movement. Eric Nielsen and other experts have attacked it, claiming that artistic expression is being used as a weapon. Rather than being imaginative narratives, statements such as, "I'll pay $1 million just to see him dead," could be interpreted as confessions. Fallout on the political front has been rapid. Critics demanded that Durk's $150,000 donation to the campaign of Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson be returned. However, a few weeks prior to his arrest, honorary keys to the city were swiftly removed by suburbs like Broadview, signaling a sharp drop in his once-cherished public persona. Hip-hop is divided. Given Durk's lack of a violent criminal history and the lack of a smoking gun linking him to the shooting, supporters contend the case is circumstantial. Some believe that the indictment is unavoidable because of Durk's lyrics that emphasize street life and F's connections to Chicago's drill rap scene. Already, his arrest has caused a stir in the industry. Songs like Prayers Up and Untouchable from Deep Thoughts are interpreted by fans as allusions to his legal issues. High-profile J. Cole and Drake have remained mute and distanced themselves from the scandal. Durk's destiny is contingent upon three potential outcomes. In federal instances, a plea agreement is the most typical result, which might lower his sentence to 20 to 30 years if he takes responsibility. Strict federal sentencing guidelines and the seriousness of the accusations mean that a trial conviction may result in life in prison. Although a quibble is extremely unlikely, his legal team may contest the veracity of witnesses or flaws in the digital evidence to produce. A reasonable doubt is that it is not merely Durk's freedom that will be decided by his trial. He would be another instance of rap lyrics being utilized as evidence if found guilty. Being acquitted would support the claim that hip-hop musicians are singled out by the system. The stakes could hardly be greater as the trial is scheduled for October 2025. Despite being charged with a murder-for-hire conspiracy, Durk's name has already been linked to scandal. Due to past problems, Lil Durk's career is torn between following the streets and becoming a well-known rapper. Instructions. From familial conflicts to long-standing rivalries, his tale demonstrates how drill music's themes of brutality and loyalty extend beyond the lyrics. In real life, it manifests. Durk received a shocking accusation in 2023. The mother of the child, who is 10 years old, was charged with shooting her lover 6 times.
Son is watching all this. He's trying to get the gun out of her hand. The gun off his hip drops, and the son picks up the gun and shoots him in the stomach.
Growing up in the trenches was tough, but it wasn't that bad, was one of the many jokes on social media about Durk possibly referencing the incident in a song, even though no charges were brought. My son shot his stepfather, and we had a conversation. Others made fun of the boy's baby threat, a reference to the violent adolescent culture in Chicago. While some brushed it off as a personal family issue, others criticized it as a tragic illustration of how kids raised in drill-centric homes accept war. In any case, the episode came to represent the way Durk's music, which is infused with retaliation and street norms, blends with his personal relationships. Chief Keef's rivalry with Durk. In 2013, Chicago became a pioneer in drill music. Durk was arrested on gun-related charges, and Key allegedly refused to post the $10,000 bond that Durk needed. Targeted Keef's squad with the tweet GBE, referring to their mutual 300 gang ties, and wrote, "You'd be dead if it weren't for 300. When Durk made fun of Keef on the Shoe Rock remix in 2015, animosity resurfaced despite their brief reconciliation. Here, Sosa and I are fighting, but we only eat one of us. For fans, this meant Durk was making fun of K's declining importance. Keef responded by supporting Games and Tyga. Diss tracks directed against Durk severely sour their friendship. Behind closed doors, the conflict revealed a rift. K's devotion to the uncensored drill scene in Chicago contrasts with Durk's drive for mainstream fame. People quickly noticed that Durk avoided working directly with Key, in contrast to peers like Lil Reese, and conjectured that their disagreement was caused by their different industry goals. But Durk's allegiance to his original block went beyond that. The Lamar 300 turned into a hotspot. The members accused him of disregarding the community in spite of sending money, cars, and firearms. The turning point occurred in 2014 when Durk's brother, D-Tang, was slain. Lamar anticipated 300 reprisals, but Durk chose to concentrate on his job. He released diss records and was banned from the neighborhood after the block called him a clout chaser. In response, Durk called out former comrades as snitches in songs, like Jesse and OJ Rats. People's behavior was appropriate. Some claimed that he outgrew his involvement in street politics, but some referred to him as a studio gangster who took advantage of his origins to gain power. The consequences brought to light a terrible reality. In drill culture, a perceived betrayal can nullify years of allegiance. Rumored NBA shootout in 2020 that claimed King Von's life rap's most poisonous quarrel was started by YoungBoy's group. After working together, Durk and YoungBoy became adversaries. YoungBoy made fun of Durk's sorrow while Durk was returning, and I detest that. Retaliation was implied in blood. With YoungBoy making fun of Durk's parenting and legal troubles, the feud intensified on social media. Different fans viewed it as a marketing stunt or as true animosity. Critics analyzed Durk's lack of response to reprisal in Reddit discussions, posing the question, if he's really about that life, why hasn't he slipped for Vaughn? Advocates contended that Durk was putting his family and profession first. The feud demonstrated how hip-hop is a genre where sorrow drives both art and profit, where industry competition and personal grief collide. Rapper 600 from Chicago as a public critic, Breezy questioned Durk's devotion to King Von's legacy and accused him of taking advantage of Van's passing. Breezy asserted that Vaughn would have eclipsed Durk in prominence if he had been alive.
You know what I'm saying? Was living in a hellhole and came home and boom. He been King Von, but he became King Von to the world.
Yeah.
So he would have been bigger than Durk because he was moving too fast.
Breezy's frequent attacks on Durk suggested that he was attempting to create controversy garner attention, even though Durk never explicitly answered. The feud reflected the larger problem of artists utilizing actual tragedy to gain influence, according to social media users. The show was praised by some fans, but others criticized it as exploitative, claiming it exacerbates violence in already underprivileged areas. Durk's music has put him in legal hot water on several occasions. Songs about shootings and retaliation were used in court proceedings, making it difficult to distinguish between confession and the arts critics claimed, that confirmed worries about the drill's impact, while proponents accused it of racial bias, pointing out that rock musicians aren't penalized for making up lyrics. Online discussions that analyze every action Durk makes have left fans and skeptics divided on his sincerity. Supporters cite the death of his brother and his early mixtapes, such as Sign to the Streets, as evidence of his origins. His opulent lifestyle and industry connections, however, are cited by critics as indications that Vaughn isn't as street as he says his charitable. Contributions like scholarships for young people in Chicago are controversial. While some perceive it as a sincere attempt to give back, others regard it as a purchase. Lil Durk has a paradoxical career. He is a father involved in violent behavior, a rapper who is accused of eluding his neighborhood, and a performer whose songs legally haunt him. His conflicts highlight the fine line that separates performance from honesty in rap. In the meantime, court cases involving his music raise the question of whether artists can ever truly separate art from art. Despite Durk's involvement remains embroiled in current and former scandals. What he does next, in light of the growing industry and legal pressures, is the more important question. What comes next for him? Lil Durk used to be a major force in the Chicago drill scene and is currently facing a pivotal period in his life as he works through a maze of federal charges that might destroy his legacy and professional freedom. Accused of murder for hire in relation to the 2022 murder of Lil Pab because of a failed revenge plot against musician Quando Rondo Durk's prospects are uncertain. The rapper's career trajectory and cultural impact are under unprecedented strain as a result of the impending trial date in October 2024. Durk's situation revolves around the federal murder for hire charge, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison or, in extreme circumstances, the death penalty. Using credit cards connected to the group, prosecutors claimed Durk used his art collective to finance the Los Angeles shooting by paying for the alleged hitmen's lodging and travel expenses. The charge against a wealth of evidence supports the case. Financial records, more than 230 terabytes of digital data, and cooperative witness testimony. Because federal conviction rates are higher than 90%, Durk's counsel has few options. To escape a life sentence, arranging a plea agreement is one reasonable option.
They're gonna come with 50 just to start off with.
50 years.
Just to start off with. And if they blow that, they're gonna go up. And if they blow that, it's gonna be like life. It's just gonna be life. I don't think they're gonna death penalty nobody no more.
Even a lesser accusation, though, might still result in 20 to 30 years because of the seriousness of the crime and its deadly consequences. Durk would have to acknowledge his guilt in order to enter into plea negotiations, which could save his life but destroy his reputation as a criminal. His lawyers can also dispute the evidence by claiming that Durk's violent lyrics were an act of art rather than criminal intent, or that F associates acted independently. The increasing use of rap lyrics as evidenced by courts, which critics claim criminalizes black artistry, puts this argument at risk of failing. The case might potentially turn into a RICO indictment, which would include accusations related to gang activities, as well as other suspects. A similar action would resemble instances, such as the current trial of Young Thug in Atlanta, where the prosecution used associations and lyrics to fabricate a larger conspiracy. A RICO case against Durk would lengthen the legal process, raise legal fees, and enhance the possibility of life in prison. Durk is currently being held in a federal detention facility and has been refused bail because he is thought to be a flight risk. His attempt to arrange international flights to Dubai, Italy, and Switzerland was brought to light by prosecutors when accomplices were detained, portraying him as a fugitive threat. Durk cannot immediately supervise his music. Empire or F brand, requiring proxies and pre-recorded content. His post-arrest 2025 album, Deep Thoughts, which was put together using recordings and phone conversations from the prison, is a prime example of this approach. Nevertheless, the absence of promotional tours, viral videos, or industry events will limit the commercial reach of new music. The expenses are prohibitive from a financial standpoint. Federal defense lawyers' legal bills frequently total more than $1 million, on top of lost income from postponed tours and stalled endorsement deals. Durk's profitable alliances with companies like Cash App and Fashion Nova can end as they grow apart, removing oneself from controversy. As affiliates competed for influence or left the group, F's stability waned in his absence, running the risk of internal strife. Where Durk's catchy trap songs formerly ruled streaming platforms, his withdrawal leaves a void in the drill scene. He might release pre-recorded songs, but his inability to interact with fans on social networking. His relevance will be diminished if he performs live or works with studios. To preserve their reputations, collaborators like Drake, a regular studio partner, and Morgan Wallen, who featured Durk on the popular Broadway Girls, may choose to keep their names out of the public eye. Connections within the industry. 10 years of labor might come undone in a flash, yet imprisonment hasn't stopped all creative expression. Artists such as T Grizzly and Young Thug have leveraged their devoted fan bases to create music while incarcerated. Durk might do the same, but his success depends on staying true to himself. If his music is seen as being out of touch or washed out, it could fail. Almost Healed, the artist's 2023 album, opened at #3 on the Billboard 200, a devastating blow. The core of Durk's success was street credibility, since his songs documented the violence and survival of Chicago. But federal charges put this story to the test. Die-hard supporters of the hash-free smirk movement, fans and opponents argue, with the former accusing him of being hypocritical and utilizing street stories to profit while avoiding responsibility. If Durk agrees to a plea bargain, he runs the possibility of being called a snitch or facing false charges that might turn off his main supporters. In contrast, if he were to fight the allegations and lose, he might be martyred in the streets, solidifying his reputation as a real person who didn't give up. Federal cases frequently depend on cooperation with prosecutors, who provide lesser-level participants leniency in return for their testimony. In order to avoid life terms, Durk's co-defendants, who are suspected of being shooters and criminal associates, might turn against him, which could lead to snitching incidents. As an example, if an associated claims, "When Durk ordered the hit, his defense would fall apart." In addition to escalating street tension, such testimony would cast Durk as a liability and encourage reprisals against his crew or family. Durk's legacy is in the middle between two extremes: a painful lesson or a rap legend. In the unusual event that he is convicted, he may be elevated to survivor status and become a symbol of resiliency against institutional targeting. Otherwise, he would be framed as another artist obsessed by the brutality he rhymed about. Similar to King Vaughn or FBG Duck and Acquittal. His impact on the drill scene in Chicago adds yet another level. His demise as the final popular torchbearer of the genre could hinder its national pertinence. However, up-and-coming musicians like Lil Osama or Sedat Honcho could bridge the gap. A protracted court battle, on the other hand, might mythologize Durk and further ingrain him in hip-hop legend. Although the death penalty is technically applicable in murder cases that result in death, just 16 federal executions have taken place since 1988. The case's circumstantial evidence and Durk's lack of violent convictions make this result unlikely. But the fact that it could happen indicates how serious the trial is, giving the proceedings more psychological weight. As October 2024 draws near, Lil Durk faces a turning point where legal, cultural, and personal stakes collide. A plea agreement promises survival at the expense of one's reputation. The specter of Rico's growth threatens to consume his entire circle, and a trial sacrifices freedom for legacy. Once a soundtrack to the streets of Chicago, his music now runs the risk of becoming a tribute to his career. Right now, our only option is to wait and watch how everything works out. After that, the video comes to a close. Thank you for viewing.